Good morning. I'm here today with Terry Stout Anderson, who is the District Department Chair for English Language Arts in a large Midwestern school district. Terry is also the author of a really wonderful article called Fighting the Good Fight, A Journey Toward Advocacy, which is in the California English Journal, and we'll have below information, a link to that on how you can read this great article. And so we invited Terry to talk with us today because she's doing a lot of very interesting proactive work surrounding reading and book bans and opposition to books through her role as a district department chair. And so I wanted Terry to tell us a little bit about that. So welcome, Terry. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So if you could start by telling us a little bit about the advocacy work you're doing around text selection in your school district. So as I said, I really see this as proactive work, and I'd really love to hear more about what you guys are doing.
Thank you. Yes. Well, it started, our district did some work with Dr. Celia Ruiz last school year. It was an all-staff thing where we were looking at culturally responsive teaching and how to have more equity-centered practices. And a lot of my department members were saying, this is wonderful, we're behind this, but how can we have some concrete equity moves? So how can we put this into practice? And so we brought in Dr. Jennifer Buehler to do a presentation on diverse young adult literature, and everybody was so excited. I must have gotten 20 emails, like just saying that was so great. That was the best professional learning ever. And then two of my high school chairs came to me and said, this is great, but our textbook depositories are still predominantly white, male, European canonized texts. And so how do we initiate the textbook process? We're not clear. We want to break down the barriers there, and so that we can really work to diversify our texts. And so that really got me thinking. That kind of prompted a whole learning process. And I was also thinking about book challenges. And I was thinking a lot about we're like one step away from a book challenge, really. Basically, it could happen at any time. And so how are we going to protect students' right to read? How am I going to protect my teachers? And so that really started the learning, as I said. And so I started looking at our already established process. I started looking at what our Board of Education policy was. I looked at the NCT position statement on students' right to read. I listened to podcasts like with Penny Kittle and Kelly Gallagher and Carol Jago, where they said teachers need to be able to say why they are reading a particular text, why they're teaching it. And they need to be equipped to sort of defend their classroom practice. And I happen to be taking a law class too for an ed program that I started, which I think I've dropped out since, but it was really helpful for me in that I learned a lot about constitutional issues and what would protect us. And one of the things that was really clear from that class that I learned is that processes are really, really important. And so I started drafting a process. I started drafting a process, having district leaders help me look at it, teachers, the two chairs that I mentioned that sort of prompted, my looking into this. I had experts. I had Carol Jago look at it. I really went all in trying to learn as much as possible. And we, drafted, and we decided to create guiding principles for this. And then basically my department chairs in August and I did a Trago Ed-like session where we looked at a potential problem analysis with our process and all the things that could go wrong potentially, and tried to think ahead of solutions. And so things like, what if nobody wants to be on a committee? What if teachers are too taxed, right? How are we going to incentivize this? And what if we don't have a representative group of teachers? We want this to be a representative group in order to diversify tax. And there was even a teacher who said, this is the first time where I felt my voice is heard and I feel comfortable. And so then we thought, how can we make people feel comfortable, doing this. And so we really brainstormed. And then I had to negotiate pay to try to get pay with district leaders, which was a whole other process, and get subs to come. And we landed on having a standing committee, which would be a way of us coming together and having a rationale for teaching this book school-wide, and why we would want to highlight a particular text to be, potentially taught across the whole district. And we're basically doing these meetings now. We had 2 this year, standing committee meetings. We had them at my home with quiche, and it felt like a book club, coffee, and by the fireplace in December was our first one. And everybody was so happy. It felt like a party where we were celebrating the books. And then we had really deep, thoughtful conversations. I had a brand new teacher who was a part of this that said, this was the best professional learning I've experienced. And this was so warm and inviting. And we came to, and I guess this is a first, unanimous decisions about all the books. We approved 4, recommended 4 for our curriculum senate in our district to approve. And then we said no to 2. And I mean, we didn't get there easily. We had a lot of very difficult conversation, and but it was a safe place for people to do that. So when we went to curriculum senate, we were able to say, hey, these were not, and we don't require it be unanimous, but it really did help us, because we were able to say, these are what we unanimously recommend with our committee. And it's been a really powerful experience. Our last committee meeting we had just a couple weeks ago, and it wasn't, there were some things we needed tweaking, but we've since kind of come together. The English department chair, high school chairs are facilitators of these meetings. So I'm kind of on the outside of the process, but still, very much involved. And we tweaked it. We decided we were going to make some changes to it to make things go smoother, and revised it so that it's clear to everybody, and, thinking about how we can frame this better for teachers next time. So, our next kind of moves are going to be, in addition to tweaking the process, really we've been working on thinking about how we can purchase these books. So that's another advocacy move. And then the other piece is, how do we get teachers who maybe are really familiar with the old texts, maybe thinking about introducing a new text and maybe teaching one of these new books, and how do we encourage that? And so it's sort of the advocacy, creating more advocacy is what I'm seeing.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for such a wonderfully detailed explanation of this. One of the things that has intrigued me lately, I've been reading some stuff from Penn America and some other organizations that talk about this. And they said when things go to school boards, the most important thing you can have is that there's a text selection process, and you have the rationales, and you have everything already done, like as a proactive thing, that this has been happening along the way. So when you get to this challenge at the school board, the districts that have that already in place tend to be more successful in keeping the book bans away. So, that's what you're doing.
It's validating. Thank you.
Yeah. So what I'd also love you to talk about is, like, what advice would you have for other teachers who might want to be able to do this same kind of proactive work in their own districts?
Find your people.
Mm-hmm.
And really you need to work with district leaders too, and kind of explaining what you're thinking about doing. But even before that, I think learning as much as possible about what the processes are. I guess that's really what I spent the most time doing, is asking questions and interviewing people and trying to gather as much information to try to learn. But there was lots of back and forth. And one thing with busy leaders I have found is you have to kind of keep bringing it up. So there's a level of persistence that is important, and then doing the back work for them to almost make it easy for them to say yes to what you're doing. That's been in my learning curve anyway, is getting that feedback, working with others. Like I could not have done this alone. I relied on teachers to help me, to collaborate around this with, and that really has been why it has been successful. It's because of the department chairs that have stepped up and have been wonderful and willing to do the work.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, we always think about that in terms of allies in the everyday advocacy world. And it's like the allies are also your colleagues who are doing this work and then talking about it to other people too. So it's spreading that way.
Yeah. And it's colleagues. And then for me, it's talking to the people above me and trying to figure out what the non-negotiables are, what those parameters are, and really thinking about its strategy, right? Because I want to know what I'm working within, and then it's a big puzzle. It's a big puzzle to try to figure out. And my frustration sometimes is I don't have a budget, actually, so I have to sometimes go to other people and ask for money. That seems to always be the biggest barrier, but I'm learning how to do it.
It's cool you're kind of talking about, you're working within the system to change the system, which is always a good advocacy move.
And they're actually, part of the issue sometimes is just bureaucracy, and there are more people on your side than you think. If you explain what you're thinking, people, I have found, want to support the good work of teachers. And it's figuring out that puzzle and that way in, and how to work within the system, I guess. And it's nobody's fault that it is. It's just like when you have a big organization, it's just trying to learn those moves in order to make things shift and happen. And I'm still learning. It's a learning process.
That's great. Oh, Terry, I want to thank you so much for talking with us today. And as I said, we'll be sharing the article, and it's a wonderful moment to be able to learn from you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate the time.